The Lord then said to Moses, "Dedicate to me all the firstborn sons of Israel, and every firstborn male animal as well. They are mine." Moses then went to the people and said, "This is a day to remember forever, the day that you left Egypt, the place of slavery. For the Lord has brought you out by his mighty power. Remember, you are not to use any yeast. This day in early spring will be the anniversary of your exodus. You must celebrate this day when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Hivites, and Jebusites. This is the land he swore to give your ancestors, a land flowing with milk and honey. For 7 days you will eat only bread without yeast. Then on the 7th day you will celebrate a great feast to the Lord. Eat only bread without yeast during those 7 days. In fact, there must be no yeast in your homes or anywhere within the borders of your land during this time. Within these days of the festival each year, you must explain to your children why you are celebrating. Let them know that this is a celebration of what the Lord did for us when we left Egypt. This annual festival will be a visible reminder to you, like a mark branded on your hands or your forehead. Let it remind you always to keep the Lord's instructions in your mind and on your lips. After all, it was the Lord who rescued you from Egypt with great power. So celebrate this festival at the appointed time each year, and remember these instructions when the Lord brings you into the land he swore to give your ancestors a long time ago. All firstborn sons and firstborn male animals must be presented to the Lord. A firstborn male donkey may be redeemed from the Lord by presenting a lamb in its place. But if you decide not to make the exchange, the donkey must be killed by breaking its neck. However, you must redeem every firstborn son. And in the future, your children will ask you, "What does all this mean?" You will then tell them, "With mighty power, the Lord brought us out of Egypt from all our slavery. And Pharaoh refused to let us go, so the Lord killed all the firstborn males throughout the land of Egypt, both people and animals. Which is why we now offer all our firstborn males to the Lord, except that the firstborn sons are always redeemed." Again I say, this ceremony will be like a branded mark on your hands and forehead. It is a visible reminder that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt with such great power. When Pharaoh finally let the people go, God did not lead them on the road that runs through Philistine territory. Even though it was the shortest way from Egypt to the Promised Land, God said, if the people are faced with a battle, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God decided to lead them along a route through the wilderness toward the Red Sea, and the Israelites left Egypt like a marching army. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for Joseph had made the sons of Israel swear that they would take his bones with them when he led them out of Egypt, as he was sure that God would do this. Leaving Succoth, they camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. The Lord then guided them by a pillar of cloud during the day, and at night a pillar of fire, which was the way they could travel whether it was day or night. The Lord then did not remove the pillar of cloud or the pillar of fire from their sight. The Lord then gave these instructions to Moses. Tell the people to march toward Piharoth between Migdol and the sea. Camp there along the shore opposite Baal-zephon. Pharaoh will then think, those Israelites are confused. They are trapped between the wilderness and the sea, and once again I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will chase after you. I have planned this so I will rescue great glory at the expense of Pharaoh and his army. After this, all the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites then camped there as they were told. Word then reached the king of Egypt that the Israelites were not planning to return to Egypt after 3 days. Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds. "What have we done, letting all these slaves get away?" they asked. So Pharaoh called out his troops and led the chase in chariot. He took with him 600 of Egypt's best chariots, along with the rest of the chariots of Egypt, each with a commander. The Lord continued to strengthen Pharaoh's resolve, and he chased after the people of Israel who had escaped. All the forces in Pharaoh's army, all his horses, chariots, and charioteers were used in the chase. The Egyptians eventually caught up with the people of Israel, camped beside the shore across from Baal-zephon. As Pharaoh and his army approached, the people of Israel could see them in the distance marching toward them, and so they began to panic, and they cried out to the Lord for help. They then turned against Moses and complained, "Why did you bring us out here to die in the wilderness? Weren't there enough graves for us in Egypt? Why did you make us leave? Didn't we tell you to leave us alone while we were still in Egypt? Our Egyptian slavery was far better than dying out here in the wilderness." But Moses told the people, "Don't be afraid. Just stand where you are and watch the Lord rescue you. The Egyptians that you see today will never be seen again. The Lord himself will fight for you. You won't have to lift a finger in your defense." The Lord then said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the people to get moving. Use your shepherd's staff, hold it out over the water, and a path will open up before you through the sea. Then all the people of Israel will walk through on dry ground. Yet I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they will follow the Israelites into the sea. Then I will receive great glory at the expense of Pharaoh and his armies, chariots and charioteers. When I am finished with Pharaoh and his army, all Egypt will know that I am the Lord." Then the angel of God that had been leading the people of Israel moved to a position behind them, and the pillar of cloud also moved around behind them. The cloud settled between the Israelites and the Egyptian camps. As night came, the pillar of cloud turned into a pillar of fire, lighting the Israelite camp. But the cloud became darkness to the Egyptians, and they couldn't find the Israelites. Then Moses raised his hand over the sea, and the Lord opened up a path through the water with a strong east wind. The wind blew all that night, turning the seabed into dry land. The people of Israel walked through the sea on dry ground, with walls of water on each side. The Egyptians then, and all Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and charioteers, followed them across the bottom of the sea. But early in the morning, the Lord looked down on the Egyptian army from the pillar of fire and cloud, and he threw them into confusion. Their chariot wheels began to come off, making their chariots impossible to drive. "Let's get out of here," the Egyptians shouted. "The Lord is fighting for Israel against us." When all the Israelites were on the other side, the Lord then said to Moses, "Raise your hand over the sea again, then the waters will rush back over the Egyptian chariots and charioteers." So as the sun began to rise, Moses raised his hand over the sea. The water roared back into its usual place, and the Lord swept the terrified Egyptians into the surging currents. The waters covered all the chariots and charioteers, the entire army of Pharaoh, all his Egyptians who had chased the Israelites into the sea. Not a single one survived. The people of Israel had walked through the middle of the sea on dry land, as the water stood up like a wall on both sides, which was how the Lord rescued Israel from the Egyptians that day. The Israelites could see the bodies of the Egyptians washed up on the shore. When the people of Israel saw the mighty power that the Lord had displayed against the Egyptians, they feared the Lord and put their faith in him and his servant Moses.